Sometimes I get out, as they say, over my own skis. And thank God I have people looking out for me to make sure that I have a safe landing and a smooth run down the slopes. One of my favorite people in the world, my favorite Canadian, JKD Senior, suggested that I revisit last week's topic and kind of firm up my message. So here we go again. JKD, technique versus principle, round 2. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast number 151. This is the one about, as I just said, Jeet Kune Do technique versus principle. As you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the broadcast. If you're catching the final edit video over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, rate, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. And I never knew this, but apparently you can share over on the YouTube as well. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video here on Facebook and spread the word about the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. And if you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please check out stuff like this. That's one of the things that we have going on, and it's available, as you can see, as a t-shirt, a coffee mug, probably even as a hoodie. All right, so you guys can check that stuff out over at jkdrebel.com. Just click on the Rebel Gear link and it'll take you right there. Okay, so you'll recall last week in the broadcast, I surmised that Bruce Lee saying, when you understand motion, you will understand styles. And Dan Inosanto saying, if you get the technique, you'll get one thing. But if you get the principle behind the technique, then you'll get it all. So my simple premise was that to understand motion, you'd have to understand the principle behind the motion. And so essentially, Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto were saying the same thing, albeit somewhat differently. It seems that in, let's call it modern day Jeet Kune Do, people are either they're not being taught to look for the principle behind what they're doing, or they themselves are not interested in seeking out that information. And I don't know which came first, to be honest. But what I do know is that over the years, there definitely seems to have been this increased interest in, if not demand for, more and more lists of techniques, more and more of these series this and series that. If you listen carefully, if you look around, you'll hear about the Jun Fan series this and the Jun Fan series that, or the elbow series or the knee series, and on and on and on and on. And now here's one of my points. That is not new, because I remember back in the old days, being on the receiving end of something called, for example, the 1-2 counter-offensive series. So that is the counter-offensive offensive series against the jab cross. But unless I was wrong, unless I was misinformed, I always took what we were being shown as suggestions or ideas with which to work. Apparently today, whatever it is that you're given on seminar becomes the exact material, as in the exact curriculum that you're supposed to go home and teach. In my opinion, when you do that, you are merely accumulating techniques, which is something against which Bruce Lee railed unceasingly. And when you do that, you also give ammunition to those who will accuse you of reading or reinterpreting, add what is specifically your own to mean accumulate more and more techniques from more and more different arts. When you do the principle thing, right? So for example, if we're looking at offensive techniques, you ask yourself, what techniques work well as simple direct or simple angular attack? What techniques work well in attack by combination, going from hand to hand, going from hand to foot, going from foot to hand, and maybe even going from foot to foot. And that's offensive techniques. You do the same thing with counter-offensive techniques, as in what works well in simultaneous parry and hit, or what works well in evade and hit. One of the cool things about focusing on principles instead of focusing on techniques is that you just might end up finding out that you kind of have to be flexible with your principles as well, right? Now, I'm not talking about compromising, right? I'm not talking about subjugating your principles or whatever, right? But so here's an example. Let's say you want to follow the principle of economy of motion, and to you that means always hit in a straight line, since, as they say, the straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, right? But you might find that a curved punch, let's call it, or a curved kick works better when applying, again, for example, the evade and hit strategy, because you created an angle or an opening was presented, which is better met with a hook punch or a hook kick as opposed to a straight line. So as a JKD instructor, as a JKD practitioner, you kind of should always keep in mind that you're supposed to analyze everything that you're given, everything that you're taught, in order to determine what works for you. So one possible benefit of dedicating oneself, let's say, to working from a principle-oriented base is that you develop the ability to absorb useful material from a method or an approach with which you might be initially unfamiliar. Okay, so you may have come into JKD through a particular method of kicking, let's say, and then you come across something else, and because you're operating based on principle, you're able to identify how this method, which heretofore was unseen or unknown or unfamiliar to you, you understand the principle behind what they're doing, and then it makes it a little bit easier for you to adopt it, modify it in whatever way or what have you. When you really get into looking for and applying the guiding principle behind your techniques, Dan and Asano always cautioned us to be careful of that. He says, because you might end up thinking yourself one genius, right? So he always cautioned against getting that big-headed approach. Now, it so happened that, like I've told you guys before, I usually have the idea for the theme of the broadcast like weeks in advance. But it just so happened that this magazine came along. I have it here with me, but I think I'll just show you in the stream, right? So this issue came about, and if you notice right up there at the top, there's a Tim Tackett article on JKD's essential principles. So that was a kind of a happy coincidence with that. So I recommend, if you don't have that issue of Black Belt magazine, I highly recommend investing in it. Okay, all right, so that is, that's it for today. Feel free to share, like, and comment, ask questions if you want, and I will go through everything after posting. Sign up for notifications for when we go live here on Facebook, and as I asked before, over on the YouTube channels for both the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast and the Jeet Kune Do dialogues. Hit the notification bell when you do subscribe, like and share, and all that. Comment over there as well. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods. I love jeetkunዶ.com. Quick Skill Series Volume 1 still available. Coming up on Friday, which is the 23rd. So we'll be doing another one of those reverse Jeet Kune Do dialogues. So my buddy T. Kent Nelson of KSK Martial Arts, he has the idea to put me on the spot and ask me some questions. So we should be on regular time, 6 p.m. On Friday, October 23rd. As if you cannot tell already, today's an Indigo Day. There you go. One of my favorite designs. Yes, I know I've worn it before. All right. So I'll see some of you on Friday. The rest of you, hopefully I'll see you next week for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Until then, I'd love to spend some time, taking a look at current comments, but I actually have to get ready for a private lesson. All right. So I'll see some of you guys on Friday. The rest of you, I'll see you next week. All right. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys take care. Be safe. See you soon. Like that. This is vertical movement. Which looks like very basic shape. Okay, now when you make your switch, you do that. If I want to switch back, I go like that. When I move in, if you go back like this, depending on what the line is.
When Bruce Lee started to teach Westerners, a lot of traditional Chinese didn't appreciate it. And I can understand that because they always thought if they taught it within the Chinese community, they could control the morality problem. But as Sifu Bruce used to always tell me, he used to say that, morality and good consciousness and all that is not really dictated by race. So he says that he felt there are good people all over, east, west, white, black, brown, it doesn't really matter. So I understand why they did it and to control it, because it is a dangerous art. Martial art can be very, very dangerous. But as I said before, morality is not dictated by race, it's dictated by a person. And there are good people and bad people in all races, in all his films. Now, I've sat down before him and I wish I can remember it now, and if I think long enough, I can remember all the details. But right now at the time, I know that for sure that he wanted to educate people, and each film had a message in it, and a message he wanted to get across. So like the way he moved was not static. A person at the end of those days would try to criticize, well, his heel is up. Oh, he's moving around like a boxer. A lot of martial artists didn't move on. They were very static. They stood down in what they referred to as a gung bo or a forward stance and everything. So when people looked at that was educating them subtly, either consciously or subconsciously. You said, oh, Lord, wait a minute, he doesn't have his hand always at the hip. Sometimes the hand is up. So there were many ways that he could educate the public. People like Art Wong, Bruce Lee, they opened the door for people. They allowed people to train in an art that was usually reserved for their race only. There was a time even the Japanese prefer to have strictly Japanese students, and then when they came over here, so it's a kind of a unit where you can bring East and West, and it's martial art, whether it be karate or kung fu, has allowed the blacks, the Latins, the Asians, and the Western people to come as one unit because they're trying to perfect themselves in a martial art. So in many ways, it's brought the races together, and particularly in our thing, Jun Fan Gung Fu, it has, because we have students of all races. We understand each other. We understand their culture better. It brought even what we refer to as the Eastern Bloc people over. So I think, yes, definitely, it serves as a vehicle to unite people. When I was training with him in '64, it was called Jun Fan Gung Fu. And I believe around '65, he had this thing called, I think he said, I'm going to call it the Tao of Chinese Kung Fu, which means it embraces many, many different aspects of training method. And what he was trying to tell me always is I'm not trying to take a little bit from Choi Li Fan and a little bit from praying mantis and a little bit from Wing Chun and then put a little Western boxing. He says, I want to express myself. So what I want to get from this method is the essence. What is the essence of Wing Chun? What is the essence of Chin Na? What is the essence of Western boxing? What is the essence of Choi Li Fan? I'm not copying the techniques, but the essence, why it's good. And he always talked about the essence with me. And I feel that's basically what he was trying to do. So in the Jun Fan Gung Fu, this is how Jeet Kune Do was evolved. He says, I want to utilize all ways, not just stay within the Chinese method. However, I'm Chinese, and it has a Chinese name, but Jeet Kune Do as a whole was to absorb was literally what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what's your own. That he gave me a book. It was called Sun Ji, The Art of War, and it was for I believe it was for my birthday, and I opened it up, and there was a lot of the things were underlined, and so I thought it was a used book, and he said, no. I said, these things are, and I remember that. I think it comes from Mao Zedong, but he got it also from Sung Ji, which was older, but it went like absorb what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what is your own. Even as the yin-yang symbol, using no way as way and having no limitation as limitation. Using no way as way, it means I don't use a Chinese way or a Japanese way. I use no way as the way, and I'm not going to be limited by a limit. That if you train strictly in the Chinese system, you will use strictly Chinese. Now that's a great culture, great race, but there are things to be found within the Chinese system, and there's things to be found in the Western system, and the African system, and Latin system. They all work, so you're not going to limit it. So Jeet Kune Do came about as a sincere effort to abolish system and style. And then he was going to make it into a style. In about 6 months, he said, no, I made a mistake. If I make it into a style, he says, then it's going to lose the effect. So that's where he came upon the Junfang Kung Fu is the base system in which we grow. If you learn Junfang Kung Fu personally from Bruce Lee, then he referred to it as the Tao of Chinese Kung Fu. But Jeet Kune Do is man's liberation from system and style. He's truly expressing what works for him. Because what works for one individual, it may not work for another individual. And that's the bottom line. I don't care if your teacher is the greatest fighter, what worked for him may not work for you.
This is during this time period in the 60s when no one made contact, and this actually was originally used for football. So what we did is take the air shields and the foam shields that they use in football, because football makes contact, and at that time karate people, it was mainly point karate. They didn't make very much contact, and they mainly kicked the air. So he liked to kick objects, and one of his favorite tools he used was the foam shield, which he liked, and he used the air shield. So this was very, very new to the karate world. Now any martial art magazine will sell 2 or 3 different types of this, but at that time period, no one used it.
I introduced the air shield to him and the foam shield because he was always looking for different training methods. He wanted to kick it in different surfaces. I said, well, we know we use this in football, we block it. We sometimes hit it, tackle it. I said, let's try punching and kicking it. And he said, nah, it won't. At first he said he didn't think it was going to be very good, but when I came back the next day, he had all these drills that you could do on the air shield and on the foam shield. And the reason why, he says, sometimes when a person kicks, you really can't tell if there's substance in it. And at that time period, everyone kicked that lockout side kick, or they did that round kick and the gi pop when they did the side kick and the round kick. And people mistook that for power. And he wanted to show that sometimes when you kick, he says, you got to see the results. And when you kick the air shield and you kick the foam shield, there is right away, it reevaluates your power, your direction of the kick. And so that's why he liked it so much.
If you look up here, this is the sign or the plaque that we had here. This is the truth in combat is different for each individual in the style. Research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useful, and add specifically what is your own. This here used to hang in the Chinatown school, along with our other albums. This one hanged in our backyard. That would place it 1970. This, of course, is a picture of Sifu Bruce. To people here, he's referred to as the Sigung. And this thing I heard from Sifu Bruce, this is actually was in the Oakland branch, Bruce Lee's Tao Chinese Kung Fu, using no way as way. That literally means that he doesn't use any particular way, whether it's Chinese way or a Japanese way or an Okinawan way or a Korean way. He uses no way as his way, and having no limitation up there means it means that he doesn't limit himself to one particular style or one particular discipline or one particular system or one particular way of using no limit as his limitation. This up here is the sign that hung in the first time he opened publicly, 1974. Man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system. This is a quote he gave back in 1968. This here is another quote. He says, "My followers in Jeet Kune Do, do listen to this. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. Truth is outside of all fixed patterns." He's talking about drills, he's talking about styles, he's talking about systems.
It didn't matter what art you took, as long as you can express yourself. I've always believed that really a person, if he's really good and really talented and he's very athletic, it doesn't matter if it's a Japanese system or a Korean system or an Okinawan system or a Chinese system. You're truly expressing yourself. So you don't really fight like the system that you've been brought up. You are expressing yourself. Although the system will help in your training, you're really expressing yourself. So whether he comes from a Thai system or an Indonesian system, you express the Thai element in there and the training in there, but really down deep you're expressing yourself. You're being by yourself. You're truly expressing yourself, not the system. And I think that's what he was trying to say. You want to express yourself, not so much if it's a Japanese system or a Chinese system. Be yourself.